Hey there, welcome to episode 93 of the Let's Innovate for Vegas audio program. I'm your host, Managing Director of the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, Dan Hugo. We are recording this late in the day, but this is a holiday week, so all bets are off. Late in the day on Tuesday, November 26, 2024. Time is 2:48 p.m. That could change. Today's episode is about the short week and a long list, a to-do list that is. If you're not familiar, the Innovate for Vegas Foundation is a Nevada nonprofit. It is a 501c3 public charity. Our purpose is to enable and encourage ideation, innovation, and implementation to make our communities better. We do so as a all-volunteer organization, myself included, so everybody involved is doing it for the good of the world. And sometimes for coffee. Sometimes we'll take a coffee. So all that said, on the 26th of November, the week of Thanksgiving for this year. It's on Thursday this year, in case you're losing track in these internet times. Hopefully wherever you found this audio program, you'll be able to find the episode description. It contains a summary, which I'll read to you, and the links for today's episode, which are the usual four. They are basically ideal examples for the short week, long list plan of execution. And as we often say of the best laid plans of mice and men, they sometimes don't happen. I make myself laugh. Somebody has to. The summary of today's episode then. This episode is recorded during the usual short week of Thanksgiving 2024. You may have picked up on that. Which, for some, is a time to take a break, spend time with family and friends, travel, or maybe just lay low for a while. But what if you have things to do? Not everybody has that ladder. Well, a lot of people have things to do. Not everybody has the gumption or the flexibility to take advantage of these long weekends. Some do. The links for today's episode, like I said, they're the same ones. If you've heard this episode before, or if you've heard this audio program in the last couple of weeks, you're already familiar with all four of these. Innovateforvegas.org is our homepage. Innovate for, F-O-R, Vegas, no spaces or dots or anything. Innovate for Vegas, and then a dot, and then O-R-G. You will find your basic info about what we're up to, who's driving this crazy thing. And there will be more coming, as I will talk about in this episode. Projectact.info. Project-act.info. The dash key is usually next to the 0 on most keyboards, so it's that key. Technically, it might be a hyphen. I've talked about this before. I've never really explored it, but unless you're typing in Unicode character numbers, hit that key next to it. It's the minus key. It's probably to the left of the plus equals key on a normal standard keyboard. Project ACT is about the autonomous cohort tessellation, formerly and still the autonomous cohort transformation. It's something we started working on in October of 2022 concerning independent or the possibility of transforming cohorts into independent cohorts of civic volunteers. In December of 2023, when the Brigade program at Code for America was sunset, you pretty much have to transform at this point, although we're coming up on a year now, so we'll see where that actually is. The tessellation, though, is about discovery of others doing something similar to hopefully foment connection, communication, and collaboration. So we'll see how that goes. So there's a very basic website there. I'm going to touch on all of these because they're all relevant to today's episode about a long list. Agileforvolunteers.org, A-G-I-L-E, Agile for Volunteers. No punctuation there. Agile for Volunteers, then .org, is about our adaptation of some ideas we've been playing with concerning an application of the Agile methodology, which I guess I could say Agile methodology to the efforts of volunteers. The Agile notion was initially conceived by software engineers for software engineers. We intend to apply it not only to non-software people in general, but to volunteers rather than employees. And so it's a different kettle of fish, as one might say. but there are some core principles, and that is what Agile was built on in general, core principles, not the collection of rules and headaches that people have grown to despise about Agile. Agile's dead. The Agile that you were forced to endure by your project manager or other management. The Agile industrial complex. That's not what this is. Agile for volunteers, whole team, communication of what the goals are, user stories. Got to have user stories. So definitely a work in progress, as is its website. Mastodon.vegas, 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 Vegas. So Mastodon for Vegas is our server that we're going to actually launch any day now. It has been backburnered. Just like, hey, we got a big giant stove. There's always pressing matters and not enough people. So as I always tell people, if I'm talking to you now, I'm not working on that other thing. I'm recording a podcast episode right now. I'm not working on deploying Mastodon for Vegas. But all of these things, and possibly more, are on the to-do list, and we'll see what we get through this week. So all those things said, I don't actually edit that stuff out. So when I do that, I'm merely entertaining you and myself. Everything stays in. Long weekends. Sometimes if we are able, we might spend a long weekend getting to those things we have been putting off, or which have not received quite the focused attention they should have previously. That's what all weekends are about. Holiday weekends are often spent traveling or preparing for gatherings, or both, so that family and friends can hang out, or so that we can hang out with family and friends, maybe. I don't know what I write sometimes. Enjoy the time, possibly eat too much. I just read something that there's the projection is 312 million, I think. 312 million pounds of food will be thrown away. Just, are you going to finish that? No? Okay, into the trash. That is that's something that no president runs on lately. Presidential candidate. And generally set aside the usual goings on for the more valuable interactions with our holiday crowd. And I will say right now, at no time during this episode or in general should you believe that what I am saying is your to-do list is more important than hanging out with family and friends. That is not the case. As I tell people, when you drop your friend or family, or when you pick them up, when you pick up your friends and family at the airport, if that's the case, go into the airport, meet them at the gate. When you're dropping them off again, park your car, go into the airport, see them off. People forget these things. Oh, I'm just going. Pick me up at the curb, or I'll take a Lyft or an Uber. No, come on. If you're able, quality time with our fellow humans is not what this episode is about. So don't think that I'm adjusting that priority. People still matter, most definitely. Hey, we have an entire public charity about community elevation. It's about working with people, making our smart city smarter. Often smart cities have a list of cool things, and they rarely, well, not as true anymore. They leave out the people part. Yeah, we have street cameras and we have automated detection of what about people? Oh, yeah, of course, people, yeah. For some reason, especially for those able to move holidays around and gather with others on a different calendar, I'm in that group, usually. A traditional holiday weekend is an interesting time to consider getting to that to-do list when the rest of the world has set aside anything they might be expecting from you during a week such as this one. So it's a great time to be off the grid, off the radar. Nobody's going to call me. Nobody's going to email me. Nobody's expecting, it was a holiday week. I couldn't get back to you, right? So that always happens. And you can take advantage of that. Sometimes you can be the one who doesn't get back to someone. One of the things that's been at the top of the list for a while is to sort out our online presence. Obviously, innovation and the internets are like two sides of the same coin after all, so we need to be online. We already moved our static website, which has been one single page for a while, over to GitHub Pages, and it is in dire need of a redo just so it looks nicer and has more accessible information, literally and figuratively, rather than the giant one page of ridiculous amounts of text. That was, by the way, we created that because when we were filing our 1023-EZ with the IRS, you provide a website link. And so anyone who wanted to know what we were up to, if we were, is this for real, Innovate for Vegas? You could visit the page, you get the rundown, there's no navigation to worry about. All links point off-site. So you could stay on one page, get the rundown top to bottom, and then, of course, grant us our 501c3 determination, for example. So it served its purpose, but it's not an attractive place to visit. Also, it doesn't integrate with our various initiatives, and everything is on GitHub at this time. And by the way, thanks to Microsoft and GitHub, as a 501c3, we are entitled to, and have had for quite some time actually, our free GitHub for nonprofits or GitHub for charities or whatever they call the program. So we've got the Teams tier gratis because of our 501c3. And actually they grant this to non-501c3 if you're a nonprofit or if you're doing open source work, you just ask and you'll figure it out. So we do make use of GitHub mostly because it's free, partially because it is a common platform that anybody in the development space will come across. So not everybody loves GitHub or wants to deal with it, but the price is right. It does a lot of things we need to do. So we may as well integrate our GitHub pages, hosted website, static parts with content that's available right from our same repositories and whatnot in the same organization. We could do this without hosting on GitHub pages, but it's becoming to be almost silly to not have some communication between the different parts of what we're working on so that they can all remain synchronized, so that a visitor to our website will see what we're up to in current form, not, oh, we haven't updated the website in 2 months. We have a few links. We have a few sites that I mentioned. Sorry about that. We have a few sites that I mentioned in the links segment at the top of this episode that are in dire need of real effort on designing content. Really, I created them to just have a thing. So Agile for Volunteers, Project Act, these have a lot more going on than is suggested on their very, very simple landing pages. The landing pages aren't really even proper, modern single page. So all that needs a little bit of attention. And there's some other things that we really need to put some effort into on the online side. The Mastodon server obviously needs to get pushed into the deployment phase so that we can actually start to use it. We just joined Blue Sky today, giving it a look. As I record this episode, there is already a Twitter-like element making an appearance. That is followers you most definitely do not want to follow back, and they may need to be blocked. There have been a couple already. Like literally an hour in, I'm not saying we got 1,000 of these, but you start to see things like, hey, that's a flag from Germany in the late 30s that doesn't need to be on our agenda. So yeah, I think everybody's very excited about Blue Sky because it's the not Twitter notion, but I don't see this. This is not going to be our new home on the internet or anything. The AT protocol that Blue Sky is based upon is making its moves into decentralizing. So eventually you'll see Blue Sky, but not hosted at bluesky.social. And that's fine. Just like Mastodon.Vegas will be a Mastodon server that uses activity streams and activity pub, as in publish, rather than the AT. And I can't remember what AT stands for, but either way, eventually somebody will bridge the two if they haven't already. And there'll probably be some level of interoperability, but hosting our own Mastodon server is, as may have intimated, is definitely in the cards. Deploying it is the big deal at the moment. So, and we're still going to maintain our Fosstodon presence, and we of course will appear on the Mastodon.Vegas server when it reaches that stage. Social media is okay. Depends on who you're engaging with. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. We did have a Innovate for Vegas Twitter account, and we really got down to zero interaction with anyone. So it didn't really matter too much. I don't know how strong a social media presence on those platforms will be. If we can self-host, federate, and so on, this will be more in keeping with what we're trying to accomplish anyway. So we'll see. We'll see how everything fits together. We have some ongoing initiatives. All of our initiatives to date are intended to be ongoing, of course, rather than having a beginning, middle, and end. So this is always going to provide some possibility of discussion. Like we can always talk about open transit, even though it was our first, our monthly hackathon meetup. That was our first project, now initiative. and it's something we'll talk about today. So everything we're working on is intended to be always growing, evolving, always something to start on. At some point, the Open Transit Project, being the oldest among our various now initiatives, might be a place for someone to jump in and say, okay, I'm new to this. Let's see. Oh, here's a running system that's deployed to the world. What can I learn to get started? Most notable lately, our MyMuni Welcome pair, which will form the basis of our information sharing platform for the greater Vegas area, but is not written for Vegas. Of course, I mentioned the Open Transit initiative, which is looking like it might be our first external collaboration effort. More on that when we have to share. And then there is our infrastructure stuff. Our infrastructure initiative on the whole is internal stuff. So it doesn't actually involve development of software or anything. So the Mastodon deployment is one example. It's part of our infrastructure. It will be brought to you by Innovate for Vegas Foundation. You can donate to our organization. It's not, you don't have to pay to participate in the platform itself. So hopefully that will be a vehicle for us to engage with our communities in the greater Vegas area. And maybe people will be moved to support us financially with our various efforts. So we're not really developing that, but it's part of our infrastructure. Our website is another. So it's not like a major development endeavor on its own. It's something that, somebody wants to spend a moment and come up with a better theme or work on the layout or something. It's not intended to be a completely self-contained effort. And there are others. These never get any attention because infrastructure is boring, of course, until a pothole destroys your suspension. Then suddenly infrastructure becomes critical. Some of our infrastructure is becoming real initiatives, so they can always migrate out into an independent effort. Agile for Volunteers was initially one page in our sort of welcome to Innovate for Vegas Foundation. Here are some ideas. And now it's an external initiative, agileforvolunteers.org. And there's a documentation component project, and there are going to be some tools for repository management and so on. And anybody can use it, or we can hopefully collaborate with others and see what works and what doesn't, what we can improve, and so on. That's the upside of open source anything. There's our Project Act initiative. This was never an infrastructure initiative, but it has moved to its own website, and there was already a component, a GitHub organization, which, by the way, is also on the team tier program. So Project Act is not itself a nonprofit nor a public charity, but it is an open source project aimed at community development and community elevation and so on. So mostly in the project development arena, doesn't have to be software. So Project Act on GitHub is also on the free tier for nonprofits and charities and whatnot. And technically, Innovate for Vegas Foundation is the fiscal sponsor of Project Act. So at some point when we reach a point of or a level of utility, we can add a donate button or something, and we can invite people to support Project Act as its own endeavor. So if we have multiple collaboration, either individuals or other nonprofits or other cohorts, it's right there in the name, autonomous cohorts. Hopefully we'll be able to do things like, it'd be nice if we could host, cloud services, or if we can pay for stickers or something like that. So we'll see what happens. But these are nice things to be able to do. If you've established your own 501c3, or if you are in a position to, there's a lot of utility that can become available at very low or no prices. So that's useful. So if we can get anyone working on anything aimed at positive outcomes like community elevation, so they don't necessarily have to be working on civic volunteer projects, but it might be like, so they don't have to be aligned with some rule book, like, you have to be doing this, and then you got to have a mentor program, you got to have so whatever it is, right? So you don't have to there's no rules. So Project Act is really about, if it goes to plan, useful for things that we aren't thinking about now, and to enable and encourage, I use those words a lot, the connection, communication, and collaboration that is hard to come by if you're Google searching, or if you try to participate in, just find projects tagged with this on GitHub. Like, there's like 150,000 projects. So hopefully we'll be able to connect people and projects. And we'll see. It's kind of an experiment, but we'll see what happens. Hackathons might return as the topic of last week's episode, which was the hackathon way. Hackathons are a good thing if we can get people to participate. If a hackathon happens and nobody's there to hear it, did it make a sound? That is a good question. This has been a challenge in Vegas, but this has not always been the case before the pandemic time. So think 2015, maybe. Is that? Yeah, well, we'll call it somewhere in there. 2015. I was at least 2 large sponsored hackathon events here in Vegas. I was working for Intel at the time, so I would participate in hackathons in general, wherever Intel was to be represented. I would be a mentor, so I'd help people work on their projects, whether or not they're using Intel hardware, but that's, you can tell my manager, I don't care. Don't work there anymore. These were events sponsored by well-known companies like AT&T and Samsung, and even Intel for one of the two, that have drawn triple-digit participation, like 100, 200, 300. I don't remember exactly, but it wasn't 10. They were in large venues. There was food and other things, all the stuff that people expect at a hackathon, unfortunately. So it can be done here in Vegas. We've had a discussion in recent days concerning bringing back local in-person hackathons. This may be a second step to return the hackathon idea that we started back in 2022 with this notion with our open transit initiative now. Hey, let's have a monthly hackathon and we'll just start. This will be the starting point of projects. And by the way, that's what a hackathon is. You often hear people thinking that the hackathon is supposed to be a one and done, and that could be. Usually if there are prizes involved, there's the notion is, you finish at the end of the hackathon and you submit it to judges or something and you might get a prize. But another way of viewing hackathons or innovation sprints is, hey, we can spend some time in a fixed window, like 5 days during the week, 2 days on a weekend, 3-day long weekend, whatever it is. And we turn some ideas into action. We have a ticking clock to make it a little more exciting. And we'll see what happens, right? So those are where ideas can sort of formulate. And then at the end of the hackathon, you say, okay, which of these, if we have 5 ideas, which 1 or 2 of them should we really consider spending real time on, real money perhaps? So you can use a hackathon as sort of a prototyping or a pre-prototyping ideation. Well, hey, that's right there in what we do. Ideation, innovation, where you can just start trying out ideas. And, sometimes you might think, hey, I'm going to take a weekend and just stop working on my day job, work on this little side project and see what happens. So all of our initiatives, as I mentioned, not only are always going, right? There's no real end to any of our current initiatives anyway, but they're all aimed at community elevation in one way or another. And there may be other possibilities driven by other entities. The important thing, though, is making these happen to get some momentum built up. So they don't necessarily need to be in-person hackathons. They may be connecting people to something like a hackathon. Sometimes they're called challenges if they have prizes. I would point to the NASA Space Apps Challenge, which is the largest weekend hackathon in the world by many accounts. Typically happens in October. I believe they had the 12th one, 12, NASA Space Apps Challenge number 12 on, I think it was the first weekend in October last month. NASA Space Apps Challenge, the Congressional Apps Challenge. These tend to be tech-oriented, although the NASA Space Apps Challenge does have some options that are aimed more at non-technical. So you end up making like a slide presentation based on some research or some ideation or some creative work that is not necessarily writing code. So good for them. That's should be included in many of these notions to try to bring out people who are creative and innovative who are not necessarily into writing JavaScript or Python code. But then who participates? So the in-person part does require that certain amount of activation energy. Like, I have to go to a place and stay awake for hours. Not all hackathons are like stay awake for 2 days. In fact, hackathons are not so rigidly defined that most things can be considered a hackathon. We talked about that last week. Our Challengers initiative is aimed specifically at not only making such challenges, whether they're hackathons or if they literally are challenges or whatever the case, visible and discoverable, not only to potential participants, but to anyone. So that we can not only make them discoverable. Hey, there's a hackathon coming up this month. Hey, there's the Congressional App Challenge coming up in, I think you had to submit your project early November. That's annually also. Hey, did you know there's a Congressional Art Contest also? That's a lot like what it sounds. But at some point, we got to recognize the actual challengers, the people who participate. They complete and submit their work, maybe individually or maybe as part of a team. And in some cases, if the challenge has this, they win prizes or other recognition. Maybe they just, maybe there's not a prize, but maybe there is some sort of a judging or or maybe just participating is winning, right? That's often the case. So recognizing and celebrating these efforts and the people, these are often by younger people who will be our entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem, if we deserve one. They should be getting more than a passing mention between resort demolitions. I wrote demotions. They've been demoted to nothing. Demolitions, sports team controversy, and lawsuits related to the Formula One events. Here in the greater Vegas area, those are the things that make the news, not necessarily that some junior high or high school students won a particular thing. They might get a 2-minute segment on a local TV news channel, or we can do better. And if we're going to be a smart city, an innovation hub, the next Silicon Valley actually has far more, I'm going to say, for the NASA Space Shuttle Challenge 2023, Silicon Valley had 20 times as many people participating in their event as did Vegas. So they had, I think it was 253 and we had 12. Not that it's a numbers game, but there is something to be said for people showing up, doing things. And we should do a better job about celebrating. First of all, making those discoverable. Of course, the Challengers website, we feature people who are taking part in challenges and doing so in such ways that we would be able to celebrate them. They're not secret projects. And obviously, people in certain age ranges would have parental permission and so on. So all those good things. But we need to actually recognize and celebrate that this is even happening. And again, Vegas culture, much more geared to, if somebody was participating in a hackathon and they of course they're of legal age to do this, they happen to put $2 into a slot. Is there $2 slot machines anymore? I don't even know. They put $20 into a machine. And I think this did actually happen during the Formula One race, which was not a hackathon. Somebody I think they spent $50, but it might have been $20 on a slot machine of some sort or some gambling device, and they won $1 million, right? So if somebody had a hackathon were to do that, they would actually make the news, and they would say, oh, by the way, they were here for a hackathon. That's probably all they would say. So we can do that. We can feature and celebrate the often younger people. But hey, you can be a mentor at a hackathon. You can facilitate. You can be a sponsor. Where do you get mentioned? If you're sponsoring a hackathon and 12 people show up and nobody talks about it in the news, then you really have to have a long tail vision. So we can help make that a little bit easier to make a case for sponsorship and participation if people know about it. So that's on the list. And to be honest, the Challengers platform is not difficult. So really, we should really have a hackathon about the Challengers platform, and it will come down to design, making it appealing, and then whatever other features that nobody's thought of, especially if we can get actual hackathon participants to contribute some of the notions. There is more stuff going on, surely more than we could ever accomplish more than could ever be accomplished by a small or solo effort over a long Thanksgiving weekend. But we have set our reach to exceed our grasp on purpose. When I say our and we in that case, I'm not talking about me like I have a mouse in my pocket. I mean, when we conceive this notion and anybody involved in civic volunteerism, if you only try to accomplish easy things, then you'll be done early. Who knows? We may end up with longer arms as a result. The weekly audio program will continue. You're listening to it right now, in fact, during this short holiday week. We may get into some live or video or some combination of ways to reach out. As I've talked about previously, we want to discuss and engage with the larger communities that we're trying to enable and encourage the making better of. The possibilities are many. We only need to spend some time, effort, and expertise, as with most other pursuits on our agenda. Volunteers, they contribute time, effort, and expertise. That's us. That's me. We can leave it here for now. This being a short holiday week and all. See what I did there? If you are doing the traditional or perhaps some modern take on a Thanksgiving holiday gathering, more power to you and yours. If you've already got your to-do list out and are at the ready, we are right there with you. Happy holidays. Catch you next week.